It's that time again. We have finally finished off going through all SMGs, and today I'm combining them into one great video. And if you're interested and have to learn about the guns, check out the chapters because there you will find each weapon. So enjoy and let me know which gun you love the most. But before that, guys, don't forget to check out all of the relevant links for the giveaway on YouTube and on Discord. And now a quick word from our sponsor. This video is sponsored by SkinBaron, the ultimate marketplace for buying and selling your CS skins. SkinBaron is a German company with an excellent Trustpilot rating, trusted by thousands of players. Save up to 30% compared to the Steam market. With over 1 billion skins and easy to use filters, finding your perfect skin is a breeze. They offer multiple payment methods including credit card, Klarna and even more. And if you're selling a skin worth over €1,000, you'll only pay 2% fees on it. Use my code Shifterz to support the channel and start your SkinBaron journey today. Thank you, SkinBaron, and now back to the video. So let's quickly go through all of the general stats of the MAC-10. It is the cheapest SMG on the T side with $1,050. It has a super high fire rate at 800 rounds per minute. The magazine size is 30 with a reserve of 100 more, and the kill reward, just like any SMG except the P90, is $600. And since the release of CS2, run and gun is more forgiving, so this gun fits perfectly into that category. And now let us look into the damage profile. We're unarmored and armored targets. This gun can actually one-hit kill, however on fairly close range, and everything else, as you can see by the numbers, is a dramatic drop-off. However, due to the gun firing so fast, you won't really notice that you're taking a lot of bullets to kill an enemy. However, sometimes if you get instantly killed, you will see, okay, I've done like 60 damage and I've shot him 4 to 5 times. And the reason why this drop-off is so hard is because of the shitty armor penetration this gun has. And this brings me now to the cons of the gun. Because of the shitty armor penetration, you will need a lot of bullets to kill an enemy. And because it's an SMG, your drop-off rate isn't the best. And plus, this means you shouldn't go for long-range gunfights. You will lose that fight. However, that's not its intended use. So what are the pros of this gun? The first thing is the price to effectiveness ratio. It is the cheapest MP on the T side and you're getting so much. With this gun, you can properly run and gun, maybe up to medium range. The spray pattern of the MAC-10 is super easy to learn. You pull down slightly to the right and then you go to the left. It is just simple to learn. And also, if you want to make it easier for you, you might even want to turn on follow recoil for the MPs, since it makes it so much easier to use it, in my opinion. Another excellent feature of this gun is to jump around corners. You can completely use this gun while in the air, and by having a crazy movement style, you will be harder to hit for the enemy, which will help you get a kill. So if you are the first one in line in a rush, jump around corners so the enemy has to reposition their crosshair and the next guy swinging can get that kill really easily. So how do you use the MAC-10? As I said, run and gun is the choice for this gun. Also, jumping around corners helps you. Staying put and holding angles is not the intended use of the MAC-10. You need to close the distance as fast as possible, kill the enemies, and if possible, upgrade then to their rifles. So when should you use the MAC-10? It is very simple. If you won the pistol round, get it. It's going to be an easy fight against the CTs. Even if your team lost and your team decides to do a force buy, you should be able to get armor and MAC-10 since it's 2050. And if you've only bought armor and didn't buy completely low, you are able to buy that. I think one pro tip: if you know the enemy has ruined the economy and you die, you might want to pick up a MAC-10 because they most likely will be ecoing, they won't have armor, and are going to be using pistols. And the worst enemy against a pistol is a fast moving target. And overall, if you are doing the ecoing, maybe consider it if you want to do a force. However, if you want to do a proper eco and not buy under 2000, stick to pistols. There's no need to destroy the economy of your team. So that was a quick and easy guide on the MAC-10, one of the simplest MPs in my opinion. However, there might be a gun that could be even better for run and gun. Let's see if you can guess which one I was talking about. So let's start off with the stats. And the MP9 costs $1,250 and is only available on the CT side. It is the second cheapest MP that you can buy on the CT side. The only one that is cheaper is the UMP. However, most people don't really use that. The kill reward is $600, which is standard for SMGs. The rate of fire is very high at 857. It has a standard magazine size of 30 bullets. The armor penetration is okay at 60%. and the effective range is short to medium. The MP9 has a simple spray pattern, I would say. It goes straight up, then goes fast to the left, and then quickly moves over to the right and stays there. So basically the first 10 shots you can just pull down and then move over to the right to counter the spray pattern. Now let us look at the damage profile, and this gun can actually one-hit kill an enemy. However, you really need to be very close to get that one-shot kill. But most likely, if you're playing against unarmored opponents, you will normally get a kill with 3 to 4 shots, depending where you hit the enemy and in combination of what you hit. However, with the fast fire rate, it will feel like you're just mowing through them. Even if an enemy has armor, the high fire rate just helps it feel fast. So even though it normally takes you around 6 to 7 bullets to kill an enemy, it still feels relatively fast. So let us now look at the pros and the cons of the MP9. And as you can see, there are 4 positives for the MP9, and it has an insane fire rate, it is cheap and efficient, the mobility and accuracy of the gun is very good, and just like a lot of MPs, it is surprisingly accurate in the air. And when we look at the cons, even though the spray pattern is pretty simple, it can get chaotic for some people who don't really know how to use the gun, especially because of the high fire rate. It is also very weak at range, which makes long range engagement absolutely shit. You've seen it in the background gameplay that I absolutely fail to fight against someone on long range, and just like all of the MPs who have a bad armor penetration, it is very headshot dependent if you're fighting against armored opponents, and that is the only way that you can get competitive against a rifle. Okay, let's now actually look at how to use the MP9. The best way to use the gun is play close ranges. Therefore, it is always good to either let the enemy push towards you so you can catch them off guard, or you close the distance as best as possible so the fire rate becomes your advantage. And as said before, the MP9 is jump shot friendly, so jumping around corners while holding the left click and while flying past the enemy is the correct way to approach the engagement. And overall, it can be said that the MP9 favors aggressive play styles or very hectic game styles. And combining that with your teammates who might flash you into the site or are also using MPs, you can use that together to overwhelm the enemy. And obviously, this gun is an eco bully. If the enemy has lost a round and you know they have to eco and you died the round, you might want to consider to pick up an MP9, because they might rush a site and try to overwhelm the enemy, and an assault rifle won't really do the job. That is why the MP9 would be the best choice there. And overall, when it comes to how to use the gun, focus on the headshot, try to get a headshot, pull down straight, and as you can see in the gameplay how I played, especially when going on mid-range engagements, I start burst firing, because the first 10 rounds are basically you just pulling down, and that can be repeated. So guys, that was the MP9 and how to use it and all of the stats. So, as always, we're starting off with the weapon stats. So, the UMP can be bought for $1,200, and for at least the CT side, it is the cheapest SMG that you could buy. Its kill reward is standard at $600, its magazine size is really low, it has a lot of reserve ammo at 100 rounds, its fire rate compared to other SMGs is also very low at 666 RPM, its armor penetration is, I would say, okay for an SMG, the accurate range is around 11 meters, the reload time of it is a lot, and the movement speed is 230 units. When we look at the damage, we can see that you can one-hit kill someone up close, obviously, if they don't have head armor. However, most likely with the UMP, you are going to be killing someone in around 4 to 5 shots. When we look at the recoil pattern of the UMP, as you can see, it goes slightly to the right and then moves over to the left, and it stays there and wiggles around a bit. So the recoil compensation is pretty easy. And now, what are the pros and the cons of the UMP? So for the pros, it has a high damage per shot, it is effective against armor, it is very cost effective, and the recoil is very manageable. And obviously the cons for the gun are its low fire rate compared to its other brothers in the SMG category. Its limited magazine size at only 25 rounds feels just not enough. The damage fall off is very dramatic, and obviously its long reload time. I think if you have played this gun and you had to reload in a hectic situation, you know that that moment feels like an eternity. So what is the optimal playstyle of the UMP? Obviously, because of the damage fall off, stick to close to medium range engagements and either leverage its mobility to flank opponents or hold tight angles where its damage can be maximized. Because of its easier recoil pattern compared to other SMGs and also rifles, you can actually hold the left click and spray with this gun, since it's pretty easy to do the recoil compensation on the UMP. The only time you should burst fire is if you have to go for the long range fights. However, if you don't have to, I would say avoid these fights at all. Either let the enemy close the distance to you or you close the distance to them, and then you should be able to maximize its potential. And to be honest, because of its easy recoil pattern and low fire rate, it is very beneficial for you to aim at the head and try to get that headshot damage in first and then start doing the recoil compensation. And when should you use the UMP? Personally, it is ideal for force buys or anti-eco rounds. However, if you're really playing aggressive, I would suggest you to go with another option, either the MP9 or the MAC-10. And that is simply because the UMP has a bit of a rifle feeling to it, and that is why I would rather suggest you to use it as a holding of angles kind of weapon. So that was my take on the UMP 45. I still sometimes use the UMP because I like how it feels. It's an easy recoil pattern, and I normally use it when I don't have a lot of cash and I want to hold off an angle, and I know that the MP9's hectic spray pattern on the MAC-10 spray pattern wouldn't really work for my position. But normally I would say go with either the MAC-10 or the UMP, since they are in general the better buy. So let's start off with the stats of the MP7. I'm gonna put them up on screen, but as you can see, it is a very expensive SMG with 1500, can be bought on both sides. The spray pattern is complex, I would say. It's shaped like a backward 7. The fire rate is high and effective for bursting. The kill reward is $600. It is effective at close to medium range, and the armor penetration is reasonably effective. Looking at the damage profile, you can see that you can one-shot if the enemy is unarmored. However, most likely if they are armored, you're going to deal a 2-hit kill to the head. But normally you should be getting a kill with around 5 to 6 shots if you only hit the body. However, if you're able to hit the head, it's more going to be 2 to 3 hits. But now let us look at the pros and the cons of the MP7. For the pros, the MP7 is really decent at mid-range, especially when you compare it to its counterparts in the SMG category. Its fire rate is very high and is also effective to burst fire with it. It has decent armor penetration compared to its SMG's counterparts, and you can actually spray really well with it, especially if you have learned the spray pattern. But normally if you just pull down to the left for about half of the shots, you should be accurate with the gun. And overall, I would say it's a solid CT side choice. Now let us move on to the cons. The spray pattern again is also a con if you don't really understand how it works, since it could be pretty weird for people pulling down to the left. Then it's less viable on the T side. It is outclassed by cheaper options, for example again like the MAC-10. Its price again is a talking point, especially on the CT side where the economy is very fragile. Spending $1,500 on an SMG can be spent better. Now let us move on to how to use the MP7 properly. As stated before, it's rather going to be in your CT side loadout than in your T side loadout. Then it is vital to learn how to spray with it. It's a backward 7 basically, so you start by pulling down to the left and then over to the right. And as mentioned before, this gun is really good at burst firing, so shooting off around 5 to 10 bullets can get you a lot of results. And to position this gun properly, you hold tight angles on the CT side, and if the enemy pushes you, you can use that fast rate of fire to your advantage. And when you're playing against rifles, prefer the close range engagements, meaning close the distance, because due to the high fire rate of the gun, you can win those gunfights. And when should you buy it? On an eco round, I wouldn't really suggest it. Maybe stick to the pistols, and if you're doing kind of a force buy and your loss bonus isn't that high for the next round, maybe stick to something else and keep as much money as possible. However, if you are not able to afford an M4, the MP7 could be a viable solution for you, especially if you're situated somewhere with close angles. So to summarize everything, the MP7 overall is, I would say, an underrated option, especially on the CT CT side. I wouldn't recommend it on the T side since there are way better options for that amount of money. However, on the CT side, I would say the MP7 could be a viable option for some specific rounds. If I've won the pistols and I'm on the CT side, I really consider taking the MP7, especially if I've survived. During the later rounds, I would only really consider it if I don't have enough money to buy myself a FAMAS, then I would consider it. And if I know that the enemy team is on an eco, MP7 could be a good option, especially because of the damage profile. But overall, I would say think twice before buying it, because the MP9 and the MAC-10 are viable other options that you can choose that are also very powerful. As always, you know how we're going to do this. We're first going to look at the stats and the spray pattern, and then we're moving on to the pros and cons of the MP5, and then at the end we're going to look at how to use it and if you should use it. So starting off with the stats, I'm going to put them up on screen, but as you can see, it costs $1,500. It can be bought on the CT and the T side. It is slower than the MP7, however it has a similar spray pattern as the MP7, and it is the only SMG that is silenced, making it the third silenced weapon we have in CS. The kill reward is standard at $600, and the ammunition that you have is 30 rounds with a standard reserve. Now let us look at the damage profile up front, and as you can see, it can one-shot an armored enemy, however only very up close. But most likely in a usual game, you are most likely going to kill the enemy in 6 shots. When it comes to the spray pattern, it is very similar to the MP7. As you can see, the shots first go top right and then move over to the left. However, the MP5 has more of a rounded off edge compared to the MP7's hard turn. Now, let us move on to the pros and cons of the MP5. Starting off with the pros. Obviously, it is a silenced weapon, so it gets all of the advantages of a silenced gun, which is no tracers, and reduced noise generation on the map. It also has a manageable recoil and is easier than the MP7, I think. And if you like to play passive, maybe this gun is for you, but that is most likely it for the positives for the MP7. When it comes to the cons for the MP7, there are some clear stuff that you need to be aware of. From stats wise, it is worse than the MP7. It has a slower fire rate than the MP7, therefore the MP7 outperforms it at close and medium range engagements. And overall, I find it hard to justify spending $1,500 on this gun, while there are way better options that you could get for that money. So if you have somehow decided, no, I really want to use the MP5, here are some stuff that you need to be aware of. First of all, the best roles where the MP5 will shine in is the lurker, flanker, or generally the sneaky positions. You can take silent routes and flank unaware enemies, and if you have to spam through smokes, it will be easier since it doesn't leave tracers. Avoid straight up duels against rifles or even other SMGs like the MP9 or the MP7, and that is also a factor why I recommended those specific roles. So personally, should you use it? I would say only consider using it if you have a very specific strategy that relies on stealth and silence. Otherwise, I would just say go with the MP9, MP7 or MAC-10. And to be honest, I would rather pick the UMP than the MP5. And that's basically everything I can say to the MP5. Stick to something else. It was cool back then to see another gun return to CS. However, I think Valve was just scared because of their past misdoings with the revolver and the ZZ, that Valve didn't give it the firepower it needed and therefore became a pea shooter. So quickly, for everyone who's wondering why I praised this gun, and it's simply because it's been a meme on my channel that when I did all of the loadout videos, I was always mentioning for all of the PP enjoyers out there the right skin, and that is why this gun is still a great meme on this channel. But besides that, let's now actually move to the weapon stats. So the gun, it's nothing special. I think the only thing special about it is the magazine size. The cost is $1,400, so it's a bit on the pricier end. As mentioned, the magazine size is 64 bullets, which is the most that there is in the MP section. You have 120 reserve ammo. The kill reward is standard at $600. The fire rate is pretty fast, 750 RPM. The armor penetration is abysmal. Reload time is okay, and the movement speed is pretty fast. To be honest, when it comes to the recoil pattern, yeah, here it is. And I don't think that this one is going to be very important while you're spraying with the PP. But anyways, here it is. But as I said, most likely you will use this gun with spray and pray and run and gun. So now let's move on to the pros. And as you can see, the pros that this gun has is a large magazine size, a relatively cheap price, I would say, compared to the higher, more expensive SMGs there are out there, especially if you want more ammo. Then, just like the negative, the suppression capabilities of the PP are really good. And a lot of players, because they do not encounter it a lot, can be overwhelmed by this. And because it is so easy to use, it has a huge psychological impact on the enemy if they get killed by a PP rush. And then, obviously, this weapon has a lot of cons. The biggest one here is the extremely low damage against armored opponents. And its overall poor DPS is something that you will always need to keep in mind of. Stats wise, this gun is outclassed by all of the SMGs. So if you really want to use the PP-Bizon, this is how you should use it. Purely as a psychological weapon. The PP-Bizon is there to humiliate your opponent. Use it in close to medium ranges maximum, and if you can get a friend to flash you into a site, it will work wonders. For example, if you're rushing B ramp on Ancient, this weapon can really be a menace. And I've seen my friend multiple times take out the PP-Bizon, rush into B site and destroy all of the enemies because they're just overwhelmed by a guy rushing into the site, jumping around corners and just holding left click. Personally, I would only pull it out during the second round when I'm rushing a site and I've won the pistol round, or if we have 3-4 people who buy the PP-Bizon and we all rush together. Then this could be really something that you might want to use as a tactic, because no one has ever done it, so people won't really know how to counter it except throwing nades and molotovs. However, if you have a semi-coordinated team and just hearing all of these shots, everyone is just going to be overwhelmed. And obviously keep your economy in mind when you're purchasing this gun, because financially you can make a better choice. However, the psychological impact, as mentioned, is stronger with this gun than any other MP. So final verdict, this gun is the best roll weapon, or one of the best roll weapons out there that you can use, and it is quite fun just running into a site, holding left click, running around the corner and jumping around the corner and seeing how the enemies struggle to kill you. There's something special about that, and it just makes you laugh. So keep that in mind, as this gun can also be pretty fun when you're actually using it and those rushes work. So, the P90 is the most expensive one in the SMG category. Many people call it the noob weapon, the starter weapon. It's basically what people use when they start off with CS, and it's an easy choice. People say just use that at the beginning and you should be good for some situations. However, now let's actually look at the stats. Starting off with the costs, it is the most expensive one. As I said, it costs $2,350, and to be honest, with that price you could also get an assault rifle, either the FAMAS or the Galil. It has the second highest magazine size in the SMG category with 50 rounds. The fire rate is very high. The kill reward is only 300, not 600. The armor penetration is pretty decent. I'm gonna put it up on screen how much. And the accuracy while running isn't really the best compared to some other SMGs. However, it is okay. However, the jump shot accuracy is low and the reload time is moderate, I would say. Now, let us look at the stats. And as you can see, the damage profile, it's pretty standard. However, because of the high fire rate, it feels very easy to kill enemies. And when it comes to the spray pattern, as you can see, it is simply go a bit to the left and then it goes left to right, and you just start moving your mouse according to that. So it's an easy weapon to use. Now, moving on to the pros and the cons. So for the pros, this gun has the second largest magazine size in the SMG category, which allows you to spray and pray. And compared to other counterparts in the SMG category, the armor penetration is pretty decent. It is also easy to use. The recoil pattern is simple to learn. You see where the shots are going and you are able to compensate for the recoil pattern pretty easily. Then moving on to the cons. Obviously it is overpriced, especially with the price market as it is right now. You can buy an assault rifle, which I mentioned at the beginning, either the FAMAS or the Galil, which are way cheaper. And because that is an assault rifle, the characteristics are a bit different than the SMG. Then, as I've mentioned, the jump shot accuracy P90 is pretty poor compared to the other SMG. That is why if you're running around the corner and jumping a lot, maybe the MP9 might be a better choice for you. Then, especially in the competitive environment, it has a pretty low viability because of its price. And on top of that, combine that with the 300 killer reward, it makes it hard to justify to buy this during a force. And then the inefficient damage output against armored opponents is notable and has to be mentioned because at the end of the day, it's an SMG. It is shooting lower caliber rounds, making it pretty hard to shoot through an enemy when they have body armor. So when should you use the P90? Mostly if you're doing a rush tactic, it's most likely going to be the best option, especially if you want to overwhelm the enemy on a bomb site with sheer firepower. And if you want, you could also use it in anti-eco rounds if you have a lot of money stored up, since it can be very effective against non-armored opponents. However, other SMGs will also do the trick. And as I've mentioned, spray and pray is going to be a viable option with this gun because of its large magazine size. And combine that with the high fire rate, people might get overwhelmed with seeing so many shots flying towards them. And if you want, you can use it in lower elos. However, if you want to really develop, maybe you want to look into the MP9 or MAC-10, since right now they are the ones that give you the best price to performance ratio. Or if you simply just want to go for the ammo size, maybe the PP-Bizon might be actually the better choice here. But hey, at the end of the day, this gun is very noob friendly and will give you a good start into the game. But switch over to the other guns if you want to be more competitive. So guys, let me know down below what's your opinion on the P90. Have you also started off back then when you started playing CS with the P90, or did you just jump straight into the AK and M4s? And as always guys, don't forget to check out all of the relevant links down in the description below, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell, and I will see you guys on the next one.